that square root. And the way we did it was we did the prime factorization tree. We said 18 was 9 times 2. And then 9 was 3 times 3. And kind of when we got our leaves, we kind of circled them, and then we said we looked for 2's. And if we had 2 of them, or a pair of them, and we said one of them gets to come out and play. So we get the 3, and then the 2 doesn't have a partner. So that partner then needs to stay underneath the square root symbol. And that then was our solution, was 3 times the square root of 2. And we worked on several of those yesterday on the assignment. Were there any others on there that you wanted me to go over quick before we get going on today's? Hearing none then, we're going to start then with how we're going to expand on this today. So the way we're going to expand on this today is we're going to solve quadratic equations maybe using this method. So what do I mean when I say a quadratic equation? Remember, our quadratic equations are anything that's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. And we call that a quadratic equation in standard form. Well, what's going to happen today is we're going to kind of eliminate this b value today. That b value is not going to exist. And we're going to look and see how do we go about solving these quadratic equations if that b value, in fact, does not exist. So, for example, let's say we have something like x squared minus 9 is equal to 0. Notice that there's no b value in there. Could we factor this? Yes, we could. Today we're not going to factor, however. This one factors. You're going to run into a lot of them today that do not factor. And we want to have a different way to be able to solve these if they don't factor. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to treat it just like it was an equation. So when we solve equations, what we do is we isolate the variable. We get the variable alone on one side, and we get the constant alone on the other. Constant being the number. Okay? And this works anytime we don't have a b value. And all the problems you have today aren't going to have that b of x, so 6x or whatever. It's not going to have that. So the first thing we're going to do with this is we're going to treat it like we're going to solve an equation. I'm going to add 9 to both sides. So we add 9. When I add 9 to the left-hand side of the equation, I'm left with x squared. On the right-hand side, 0 plus 9 is 9. So now I'm looking at x squared is equal to 9. Well, how do you get rid of square roots? Anybody have any idea? How do you get rid of squares? I said it, right? You get rid of squaring something by taking its square root. So next step to this then, we are going to take the square root of both sides. Taking the square root of a square cancels that square out, and we're just left with x. Now here's an important part of this. Anytime you're solving an equation, when you're taking a square root, your solution could either be positive or negative. So it's going to be positive or negative the square root of 9. Anytime you're solving an equation and you're taking a square root, you have to do this. We'll talk about why in just a second. What's the square root of 9? 3. So our solution to this is plus or minus 3. Why does it have to be positive or negative? If we look in our original equation that we started out with, x squared minus 9 equals 0, our goal is to find all x's that are solutions to this. If I go and check plus or minus 3, if I take 3 squared minus 9, 3 squared is 9. 9 minus 9 is 0. That's what it's supposed to be. But also, if I take negative 3 squared minus 9, a negative times a negative is a positive, so that's 9 minus 9, so that equals 0 as well. So because we're squaring it, our result has to be positive or negative, because when you square a positive, it's positive. When you square a negative, it's still positive. Okay? So keep this. Oh, make sure I change the attendance. I didn't see you. Remind me. Okay? Make sure you always, after you take this square root, the next step, make sure you put plus or minus that square root value. Okay? Let's look at the next one. So now let's go x squared minus 6 equals 92. We've got 6 being subtracted from our variable. We don't have a b value. There's no x in there. So we're going to isolate. So you get rid of a subtraction of 6 by adding 6. That gives us x squared on the left-hand side, 98. On the right-hand side, take the square roots of both sides. That leaves me with x is equal to positive or negative square root of 98. Now, this is why we worked on what we worked on yesterday. We're not going to put the square root of 98 in our calculators and hit enter and get a decimal. We're going to take this and we're going to do the prime factorization tree for this. Two and 49. 49 go into it, right? So it's 2 and 49. 49, 2 is prime. 49 is 7 times 7. That's prime. So then our solution to this is x is equal to, the 7 has a partner, so plus or minus 7. Don't forget to put that plus or minus in there. The 2 doesn't have a partner, so that 2 has to stay underneath. And that's why we worked on what we worked on yesterday, so we could kind of go through these problems and at least have some practice in it done. And that's your solution. Hard to check those. You did the math right, you're good. Okay. Questions with that one? So let's go with x squared minus 8 equals 10. Go ahead and see if you can solve that one. See if you can find the value or values of x that work for that one. Good stretch. Did I? I don't know. Depends. Yes, I did. What do I do? What's first? Add 8. So we get x squared equals 18. Take the square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of 18. 18 is 9 times 2. 3 times 3. So plus or minus 3 radical 2. How do we do? Any questions with that type? Okay, so the type we've been looking for is just add addition or subtraction to our variable. The next type we're going to look at is we're going to say, all right, what if we have now multiplication happening to our variable? So we have negative m squared, negative 6m squared equals negative 96. Divide by what? What's our variable being multiplied by? What do I divide by? 6 or negative 6? Multiply by negative 6. Divide by negative 6. 6's cancel out. Well, they make 1, I guess. So m squared equals 16. If I do 96 divided by 6 on a calculator, I think I get 16. Take the square root of both sides. M equals plus or minus the square root of 16. Square root of 16 is just 4. So you get rid of multiplication by dividing. Well, what if we have r squared divided by 7 equals 21? How do you get rid of division? Multiply. So multiply both sides by 7. So r squared equals 147. 7 times 20 is 140 plus 7. Yep, 147. Take the square root. R equals plus or minus the square root of 147. What are two numbers? Use your logic here a little bit. What are two numbers that go into 147? 21 and 7, right? I mean, might as well use what we used before, right? Sit there and punch in your calculators. It's kind of hard to do. It's a hard one to find, but we know we took 21 times 7 to get there, so we might as well use it again. 21 and 7. 21 is 7 times 3. So my 7 has a partner. So plus or minus 7. My 3 doesn't have a partner. Right. Then we talked about the math behind why it comes out yesterday. Just keep those in mind. Okay.
Where are the copies at?
We're not done yet, man. Just wait. You can do it online if you want to. It's there. Well, then you can wait. So we've done ones that have addition or subtraction. We have ones that have multiplication or division. Then the next logical step for us is to take and say, okay, let's put it together. If we have 5x squared minus 14 equals... I want it to be kind of nice. 66. So we have a multi-step one now. Remember when you're doing multi-step equations, there's no b value, so we have to isolate it. Get rid of any addition or subtraction to your variable first. So in this case, we have 14 being subtracted from our 5x squared. So the first thing we are going to do with this is add 14. 5x minus 14 plus 14, combined like terms, just gives us 5x squared. 66 plus 14 is 80. Now what? Divide by? Divide by 5. X squared equals 16. Take the square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of 16. Square root of 16 is 4. So plus or minus 4 is our solution into that multi-step equation. Okay, I want you to try one of these on your own. And then we got one more thing to talk about, and we'll call it good. Let's go negative 16 minus 12k squared equals negative 232. Go ahead and solve. What's first? What do I do first? Add 16. So that gives me negative 12k squared equals negative 216. Oh, does this work? Divide by negative 12. Right? Is that a nice number? Is it really? Nice. K squared equals 18. Is everybody okay? See how we got to that 18. Take the square root. So k is equal to plus or minus the square root of 18, which we've done 3 times already today, 2 times already. It's 9 times 2, 3 times 3. 3 has a partner, so plus or minus 3 radical 2 is your solution. Questions with that one? Examples I had. Well, the last one. Notice it was negative here. But once I got it isolated, it was positive. So get it to that isolated part first. Jeez. All right, last thing I want to talk about. K squared equals negative 16. Thoughts on that? Okay, so if we take the square root of it, we take a square root of this. Take square root of this. So k, by how we've been describing it then, would be plus or minus the square root of negative 16. When we have something underneath the radical, if I just had the square root of 16? That's not what that says. This is the square root of 16. What's the answer here? 4. What does that 4 mean? What does that mean? It's 4, but what does that mean? 4 times 4 times itself. A number times itself is going to be 16. Is there a number times itself that's negative 16? What's 4 times 4? 16. What's negative 4 times negative 4? 16. We can't do 4 times negative 4 because they're not the same number. Okay? So what do you suppose the solution to this is right now in your lives? There isn't one. Okay? There's no solutions right now in your lives that are going to make this work. Okay? So the answer for now, until you get into Algebra 2, is no solution. That's a symbol for no solution. Anytime you get something squared that's equal to a negative number, your automatic reaction right now, put no solution. But make sure that it's isolated first. You have to make sure that you have it all isolated first. If we go back to one of the other, and then once you get it to that isolated part, if it's still negative, it's no solution. In Algebra 2, you'll find out the answer to this is plus or minus 4i. You'll be introduced to the imaginary numbers in Algebra 2. Okay? So your assignment for today, you're going to solve quadratic equations using square roots. If you want a copy of the worksheet, you can come up and grab it in just a second. Tomorrow, we're going to expand on this just a little bit, where we're going to throw some of them in there that have a b value, and some of them won't have a b value, and you're going to have to distinguish between the two as to which one you use. Do you do factoring to find the zeros, or do you use the square root property that we used today? Okay? 953, that's not bad. Worksheet's over there if you want it. You don't have to take the worksheet. It's in Schoology. Okay, but if you want a worksheet, it's right there. You can go grab it. Remember, you still turn it in by taking a picture. You should have this done. Go. Before you walk out of this room today. That's always kind of the plan.